the color analyst for the Auburn Network, and has worked beside Rod Bramblett, and they've been friends for a long time. And Rod stepped into some really big shoes, in his career, and stepping in, and as far as all the things that he's done and accomplished. But let's go to Stan White, joining us now, the former quarterback and color analyst and partner Rod Bramblett's. And Stan, first of all, man, our thoughts, our prayers. Just so sorry for this tragedy this past weekend with Rod and his wife, and just for his family and for the Auburn family. And just want you to know how much we've been thinking about you guys.
Well, thanks, Jay, and I'm probably a lot of people out there, still a little bit of disbelief and shock, and it's been obviously a tough couple of days, and for a lot of people, and I've never wanted to look back, and never really had a reason to look back at all the games that Rod and I have called together, and our broadcast crew, but. Yeah, I guess I found myself doing that a couple of days ago, and we'd been together 16 straight years, and of the 233 games I had called, 208 have been with him, and so it's tough, and it will it'll be a slow process, obviously, this week, and then as football creeps in the fall, it'll probably have another wave of emotions will come back. So, but God has a way of helping us grieve, and everybody does it in different ways. And so you just have to keep Joshua and Shelby, his kids, and Paula's kids in your prayers and thoughts. And they were just a fantastic couple.
Of all the times you spent with him, I know there's a lot of things that are as far as on the radio, but maybe a story outside of just the broadcast, just the some of the one-on-one opportunities, and just the personal interaction that you had with Rod Bramblett, because the moments that I've had with him, he's always been the most courteous, the most friendly guy that you just walk up to and talk to about anything. And it was always a great interview. Always had a great smile and a laugh. And I'd love to just hear some of your moments with him, even outside the broadcast.
Well, you're right, Jay. I mean, the one thing that Rod and Paula Bramblett both you could say about them was that they were just so kind. They were just kind human beings, and they got it. I mean, they understood. They how to treat people, and Rod really embraced being the voice of Auburn. And he knew that it was a very important role, and he embraced it and took pride in it, and he just felt that was his calling, and he was just fantastic at it. Off the air, a lot of the memories that I have and will continue to have is usually on Friday evenings, we as a crew, we would go to dinner in whatever college town we were playing in that weekend, whether it be Fayetteville or College Station or Athens or wherever, and so that's when you do a lot of your bonding with your crew and your team, and you have a lot of you share, because everybody has kind of a different week that they go through, so you share a lot of personal things you go through, and how the week's been, and maybe a little bit about the game the next day, and the broadcast, and so those are the memories that I have as much as anything, and will have. I don't know if I've ever listened back to a radio broadcast that I've ever done in 18 years now. And of course, I found myself listening back to a couple of big calls from Rod, but, he really embraced that role. And, I mean, as much off the air as on the air. And whether it be teaching young, people that want to be in that business in classes at Auburn, or reaching out to someone that had some opportunity to maybe go into that business, and he just always had the time, and he I can assure you that I butchered many calls throughout my years, and probably will continue to do that. But the one thing Rod Bramblett always made us in the booth feel like was that he always made us feel he was the best in all of us, and he always had a way of reeling it back in and being that professional. And he's obviously a legend with Auburn people, and will be for many years.
Hey, Stan, this is Scott. Good to talk to you, buddy. And again, condolences and prayers out to everybody. at Auburn, and as particularly the broadcast crew there. And I want to ask you, I can imagine, being in broadcasting as long as all of us have been in, to lose a partner like that, and what your next move is, and how you go about that. I remember you stepped in 2003 when Jim passed away. It was Rod that had to step in because Jim passed away unexpectedly, and we were all very sad when that happened. And then Rod had the incredible task of filling in for what I think was one of the greatest broadcasters in the history of the SEC, Jim Fife. And so now you have to move on, and as a quarterback and as a leader, I imagine a lot of people are kind of looking to you today for leadership during this tragedy.
Well, and unfortunate, that I have had to, whomever Auburn chooses will have as tall a task as Rod had back 16 years ago. My first year was 2001, doing live radio, and I took over for a guy that had been in it about 12 or 14 years, in Charlie Trotman, and he and I are great friends to this day, and so 2 years with Jim Fife was a phenomenal time for me as a young analyst, so to speak, but I remember, when Rod took over for Jim, and it was a very, very tough situation, and he embraced it. He knew he would never be the next Jim Fife, but he didn't want to be, and he wanted to at some point in time be the next Rod Bramblett, and that's what he became, and that's why he worked tirelessly at it, and he was such a humble person, and he just really made everyone in that booth feel better than they were, and especially at the craft that they were doing. And one thing I can unequivocally say is in 208 straight games, we never had one of those moments at the end of a commercial or the end of a game even where, we thought we were walking on each other's toes, so to speak. And that's very rare over 16 years to not have any kind of disagreeing moments on it, because I can assure you I probably walked all over a fantastic call that he was about to make, but he always gave me that time to analyze what happened and what may be about to happen, and I'd like to think that he knew that I was going to give him time to call the exact moment, the present day of the play, and so we were just a great team. I mean, it was very seamless with that transition, and he had a very, very daunting task to take over for a 20-year legend in Jim, and I would say he more than admirably filled in for that role.
Stan White joining us, color analyst of the Auburn Tigers, and teammate Rod Bramblett in the booth. Give me your favorite moment. Kick six, is that one of the most memorable for you? Maybe another one or two that you could share with us as far as a call in the game that you remember?
Obviously I think that one comes to mind because of the just the organic nature that it came about. I mean, that's one thing that Rod he never rehearsed plays, never did, not one time. And he felt like it would take away from the moment. And I agree completely. That was the spontaneity needs to be there. And at that moment, or the prayer in Jordan Hare, or the kick to win the national championship game against Oregon, some of those huge calls that Rod made, the touchdown to Courtney Taylor to beat LSU back in 2004 when Jason Campbell was quarterback. I mean, ones that come to mind, he nailed it. I mean, he nailed it every time, and because of the spontaneity, because he was prepared as much as anyone to be the voice of Auburn Tigers, but his preparation was on purpose not to rehearse certain plays. He wanted that spontaneity, that organic nature of it, and it came through so many times. And one of my favorite parts of the game was actually Rod's opening tease. He wrote that every single week, and he may come up with something, a unique fact that had nothing to do with who Auburn was playing that day. It may have had nothing to do with football in general. I was speaking with someone earlier that we were playing Auburn, and West Virginia was playing back in 2008. And part of his opening tease was a reference to Don Knotts in the Andy Griffith show, because Don Knotts was from West Virginia, and it was something really off the wall, but it was fantastic. And so that was some of my favorite parts of the broadcast was hearing what his opening tease was going to be like and how he implemented that into, the Auburn game. And so he made that his own, and he graded himself beforehand. Sometimes he would say he didn't know if this was going to be a great one. He didn't feel good about it. And then sometimes he would say, guys, I kind of like this tease. You guys listen. But I'm going to tell you what, he nailed it every time to me. And that was just that little personal touch he put on the broadcast.
Stan, I think those things that you just mentioned really hit home with people that listen to broadcast. The opening moment, setting the tone for a ball game, a big ball game, and showing what that particular game means. As you know, every game in the SEC means something. And I'm sure Rod was able to emphasize that every Saturday. But, Stan, I saw a video this weekend I'd never seen. It was a video of you guys in the press box as the kick six was going on. I'd never seen that before until this past weekend. We've seen the call and heard it 1,000 times. And honestly, as Alabama guys, it never gets old because of the iconic nature of that call. But seeing you guys and the reaction that y'all had in the press box, as you mentioned, the organic nature of that, watching what was unfolding down there, and then also being able to maintain your cool during maybe the most iconic play in college football history, and you being a part of that. Seeing that, I think, for a lot of fans, really humanized Rod Bramblett and your entire crew there, because I think Sports Illustrated, I think, named named Rod the Broadcaster of the Year in 2013, which is an incredible honor for him. But that call, it seems so much more iconic today than it did 2 days ago, and seeing y'all's reaction, I think everybody sees it from a different point of view today than we did on Saturday.
Yeah, and I watched that back the other day, I guess Sunday, and credit to Jessie Duvall. She was our producer during that season, and she had thought, a couple weeks prior when the Georgia call happened, that, man, that would have been kind of neat to have that on video, our reaction. And of course, she quickly grabbed her phone and videoed that from where she stood. And she was the producer, plus she became the videographer on that particular moment. and I tell you, and that epitomized Rod. We were all going crazy. At some point in time, you have that happen, and you just become a fan. And I think that's the organic nature of what it needs to be. I mean, you become a fan, but when everyone around was going crazy, everyone in that booth, obviously in the stadium, Rod had the wherewithal to, he knew that people maybe in Georgia or Armed Forces Radio across the world or on Sirius XM, wherever, was still listening to him. And he was painting that picture still as we were hugging on each other and celebrating. And obviously it was not a great play for the Alabama faithful, but he still had that mindset that I've got to paint that picture and continue to do what I do, and he did it. And the next week we're in Atlanta playing, and Vern Lundquist, one of the iconic broadcasters, comes and says, guys, y'all nailed it. And he was talking really to Rod because I only had 3 words in it. And so
oh my God!
and not many people know this, but Patrick Tisdale, our engineer, stands right behind me. He saw that we were about to lose it, and so he slowly started turning my volume down on my headset because I was saying a lot more than oh my gosh, and so thankfully he did that because I may have interrupted one of the most iconic calls in sports history. And luckily, I was able to get those 3 words in because I remember Gus Malzahn telling me the next week, "Were you? Oh my gosh!" I said, "Yeah, that was me." So anyway, there was a lot of moving parts within that call, but Rod literally nailed it, and it was just a special moment for the Auburn folks, obviously, and unfortunately for the Alabama folks, they were the victim of that. But it was still, I think everyone would agree, that was one of the most iconic endings in any sports in history, just the way it happened.
There's no doubt about it. Hey, Stan, tell Josh, Shelby, the family, everybody associated with Rod Bramblett and his wife Paula, our hearts go out to all of you guys, and we'll continue to pray and lift all you guys up. And just so sorry this has happened.
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Good to be on with you.